It's been a little while since I've shot a video. I've been busy, but no major occurrences, I guess. A decent number of holiday events, family events, things like that, or not holiday events. A lot of birthdays around this time of the year seems like too. But I do have a few interesting things. One, I am doing well on a flag, a human flag, where I have a vertical pole I placed in the yard earlier this summer, and I'll train on it in the winter too. And I wrap my body around it in a certain way, and I'm able to stick out sideways. I used to be able to just grab onto it with my two hands and stick out straight to the side. Haven't been able to do that for quite some time. But for a while now, I've had, and a little while ago it was worse, I was developing a little bit of a curve in my spine. My spine was starting to curve, and I couldn't really keep it straight. And I realized when I did the meditation retreat actually that I used to do flags and I used to do a ton of spine exercises of various sorts, and now I've had so much trouble with all my spine stuff, brain stuff, brainstem stuff primarily, that exercising has not worked out almost at all, because I would work out and then my body was completely off and it would just kind of deteriorate and whatnot. So it's taken me a while to get back around to it. But working the flag, I've been making a lot of progress over around the last 2 months, I would say. That's conjecture, but around that amount of time, and it seems to be making a huge difference in my spine. I still can't take impact. I still driving for long distances can mess me up for days, and even driving for a short distance can kind of fry that day individually. And I try not to walk too much. Right? Impact in general is not good, but the flag is helping overall. So I'm able to not have any impact and function a lot higher for a lot longer periods of times, which is good. And my workout schedule is crazy. I have adjustments on Tuesday and Thursday for the chiropractor. And so I work out for a few seconds on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Like today, I mean, I really worked out my back because you're getting a lot of leverage on it, and it worked out for maybe a total of 4 seconds, like 2 seconds on each side, and my muscles are all inflamed along my back. It's a hard workout, so I used to be able to do it really well for a much longer period of time. My writing is going well. I like it. I have not started my second essay for the Philosophical Association, International Society for Philosophers, but the first one I got completed and it was good. It was interesting, fairly intense. I got a lot of good reactions out of it. I jumped right in and started off with discussion of suicide, then values, then pain, and then loss at the end. So it was a nice heavy one, and my other ones will be too. I'm planning on doing one maybe near the same length on the meaning of life, violence and society, and the creative ape. Those are what I plan on being the titles, so it should be pretty interesting. I recently wrote a short story, which is a my first dark fantasy slash horror type of story, because it had the sacrifice of 1,000 children, the draining of their blood, and then the baptism of Hannibal, the ancient general of Carthage, in the children's blood. So it was nice and tense. And I don't even read stuff like that generally, but it was pretty interesting to write. And my idea with that is that history, not a ton of people that really care that much about history, oddly enough. And a lot of the history we learn is kind of fake, legend. It's all shifted and it's different than if you were trying to learn true history. There's almost no one interested in true history. And so people are interested in mythology. And it's kind of interesting that, like Hannibal, the ancient general of Carthage, huge part of history. We have tons of records on him. He should be a huge name. I don't think very many people even know who he is. I think if you say Hannibal, most people are going to think of Hannibal Lecter, which I never watched those movies, but the cannibal guy, I believe, uh, Jack Nicholas, I think, and or Nicholson, whatever his name is, but played crazy guy, right? So they don't even associate Hannibal with who should be Hannibal. And I don't think that's going to happen. And there's not going to be like a huge resurgence in the history of Hannibal, except for if he's turned into mythology. Hercules is never going away, right? But we don't know the history of Hercules. We know the mythology of Hercules. Achilles isn't going away, but we know the mythology, almost legend, of Achilles. Not so much the history, but he's more real, so he's less popular than Hercules, right? So the more fantasy based we go, the more popular for the longer period of time. It's very interesting, and it's kind of fun turning history into mythology. Someone has to take the history, turn it into mythology, and it's kind of interesting to do, and especially as just a third party. Alexander the Great actually took writers with him, chroniclers, to help turn him into a legend and a myth in his own time. And of course, he moved from being, kind of this legend that not a ton of people believed about him being some sort of descendant of maybe a minor god or a god, to being a full-fledged god within his lifetime, and his lifetime wasn't very long because he died when he was 32, I believe. And so pretty fast, and he started fighting and leading as a cavalry officer when he was 19. So really just half his life, a little less than half his life, he went from maybe having some sort of connection to a god to being a full-fledged god, and Alexander has stuck with us for quite well. And then there's other ones like Genghis Khan, which have stuck in history pretty well, but I think Kublai Khan was more associated with mythology, and he seems to be sticking in the memory maybe a little better. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm kind of interested in making stories to turn history into mythology. I'm going to write an article here pretty soon on 6 major different writing ideas that I have, and that's one of them. And I'm interested in it. Reading some great stuff now. I I always read a bunch of stuff at the same time. I read 2 articles by Benjamin Franklin so far today, just amazing. Well, one was actually his interview about the Stamp Act in England, which helped create a decade before the 1776, but helped create the whole American Revolution. But I used to read so much nonfiction stuff together, and I still do. I'm having a hard time getting away from nonfiction. But now I'm trying to read more fiction stuff, especially at the same time, because I used to average, well, between reading like 3 and 10 books at the same time. Well, let's say general average, I would read like 4 nonfiction books and 1 fiction book at the same time. And now I'm trying to kind of reverse that, like read 4 fiction books and 1 nonfiction book at the same time in a very general approximation. And so I'm reading these 3 fiction books right now, which we have Harry Potter, number 4, Dark Ages by Valerie Price, and The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. And they're all epic fantasy based. And it's really cool. Those 2 have the covers on, although they do have really cool covers. That's The Name of the Wind, and that's Dark Ages. And both of those books, and Harry Potter obviously too, have these cult fanatical followings, which is really cool and fairly rare to see in novels. So you know that the novel is good if it develops a strong reaction and people like that. I'm also continuing to do the exercises I do a replay, which I consider to be the greatest novel of all time. And that is changing my writing style. I can feel it. That last short story I wrote, I could feel at certain points that I had almost like these 2 subconscious options on how to do a certain stylistic thing at one point. So it's definitely working. It's being ingrained. It's a really weird writing exercise to basically mirror image a story with not the same story, but just to copy the style essentially. It's challenging, that's for sure, and it's interesting. I'm still teaching online the kids in China. That's going all right. The one company is just a huge company, and you're really just punching a clock. It's really hard to make progress because you have such little freedom. There's little consistency. They have like 5,000 teachers, so you might as well just have a number stamped on your arm for all they care. And then the other company is becoming more like that. is becoming more of a bureaucracy, more systematized, which isn't bad on its own, having systems, but it's becoming less individualized, which what is the point of having one-on-one tutoring if it's less individualized? So I've been debating launching a company in there, but I've it's been 2 years now. It's been 2 years since I did the whole trip to Africa thing. Whew. It's kind of trippy to think about. It's been 2 years. But I've been having all this trouble for 2 years, and for a lot of that time, I was much worse in various ways than I am now. And I've tried so much stuff that I failed, and I've done some cool stuff over the last 2 years too, because I really tried to push it. And some of the time I was deteriorating so quickly, I wasn't sure if those were my last 2 years or what. But I've had so many opportunities that I pursued, especially career-wise, work-wise, business-wise, that I haven't actually been able to do. Once I've been able to open up the opportunity, but then not do them, and I just highly doubt my abilities now, which I didn't have like an overwhelming amount of confidence at any point, but now I know that my real legitimate abilities are probably less than my low expectations. So I hesitate. I hesitate on that stuff quite a bit, but it's increasing, and I'm participating in 2 speaking groups again now. I'll have to cut one in probably another 6 months. It's kind of irresponsible for me to be doing two. It's taking up so much time and energy. Can't shift it to other things. But I've been thinking about launching that company for teaching English online. Another hurdle that has engineered itself is that China is closing itself off again. They're making changes politically that's consolidating power in the government into one emperor-like figure. And more important for me than that is they're basically shutting down their internet and closing off China from being able to communicate with the outside world. So just a little bit ago, a month ago, something like that, they shut down VPNs, virtual private networks, where you could pay like $10 a month, and technically it was illegal to buy, I think, but not illegal to have, something like this. The laws are kind of screwy in China, from what I understand. But it allowed them to pay $10 a month, and then you could go on Google and Wikipedia and Facebook and Twitter or whatever else, basically all websites. So students, for instance, can go to my blog and they can see text, but China blocks all of my images, which is weird. So, and I mean, a lot of the stuff I write, fiction-wise and non-fiction essay-wise, is too advanced for most of my students, anyways. But nevertheless, it's kind of annoying, and it really limits them in what they can do, and they're limited in a lot of other ways. For instance, videos is basically nothing. You can see videos that are on Chinese websites, so they've locked themselves off in a lot of ways, and they're doing more so. So they're kind of sealing themselves in. It's called the Great Firewall. It's kind of like building the Great Wall of China again. They're kind of trying to block themselves in. In that case, it was really idiotic. In this case, it is also really idiotic, but for slightly different reasons. In that case, the Mongolians just came through the gates, and once they breach one great gate, they're on the inside of the wall. So if you have a huge wall and you have any single weak point ever that they breach, then it eliminates the need for the whole wall. And then you had to kill a bunch of people and destroy a huge part of your economy to build the wall. That then didn't work because you weren't dealing with a few people here and there. You were dealing with an invading army. That seems so obvious. But 2020 hindsight, 2020 foresight, is that if you seal off a huge section of your economy from communicating with anyone else in the world, then that economy is going to become less. So we'll probably see China, we'll definitely see China's economy slow compared to what it could have been, hard to say what that would have been, right? But it's going exponential. So that exponentiality will probably fall off. Now, will that mean they start going more linear? I think not. I think they're probably going to plateau. So it's going to be a logarithmic curve. Anyways, it means I would have to use all Chinese sites separately, which aren't even available in English. And then, what happens when there's one day that China decides to block my stuff just completely arbitrarily? So it's hard to say. On a somewhat associated note, I think last month the United States passed a law making all Bitcoin necessary to be registered. And like a couple of days ago, yesterday or something, they offered a Bitcoin futures exchange, which is interesting. So Bitcoin is becoming integrated into the society and accepted. Technically, it's a private currency, so it's illegal. So the government could throw everyone that's ever been involved with it in prison anytime they want. They don't need new laws to do that. They already have them. But they passed a law last month saying that you have to register all your Bitcoin, and anyone that's read or been associated with any amount of history at all knows that generally countries, governments have you register stuff before they seize stuff, right? That's the only way it works. So the National Socialists did that with guns, right? The first country with to do that in the modern industrialized world. Register the guns, then we seize the guns. And that's what we see over and over throughout history. And, FDR did it with gold. In this case, it could be happening with Bitcoin. So that'll be a very interesting development. I'm glad I get to see it, even if it goes bad. Most of human history is bad. It's still interesting to see. So we'll see how that goes. I also, over the last couple of months, have been having, I've had health issues for years now, but I've noticed that some of my other organs have been having issues. So I've had issues with my heart and with my lungs. Those don't seem to be horrible, but they're probably not in great shape, right? You press on your brainstem, stuff goes wrong throughout the rest of your body. You start losing functionality in your organs, you start dying. That's why the class statistics say that my life expectancy is like 6 to 16 years. We'll see how that goes. The way I've been doing now, I think we might be able to press that out either more towards the 16 years or extend it to 20. We'll have to see. But the next news is not super positive, and that my pancreas and liver were not functioning right in some way. I had a 12-hour fasting glucose of 97 a couple of months ago, which is not good. Right? Doesn't mean you wouldn't be classified as like diabetic at that point. You'd be classified as becoming diabetic. So I mostly ate a lot of fruits and nuts and pot pies. Chicken pot pies mom makes are great, and a decent amount of 7-layer salad for a couple of months. And I wasn't super strict on it, but I really watched that type of thing, that type of stuff. And I've been taking a ridiculous amount of supplements and vitamins and minerals and pills and oils and enzymes and all that. Actually, I don't have enzymes. And all that type of stuff, a lot of health pills. And I took it a week or two ago, something like that, and my 14-hour fasting glucose, I missed by 2 hours, but my 14-hour fasting glucose was 85, which is really good. So I hope I have that under control, but I have to watch it because with the issues with your brainstem, I'm having damage caused to all my other organs. That does not necessarily bode well for the future, but what I was able to do with it in a couple of months does bode well for the future. So we'll see how the future bodes. I have a speaking contest coming right up. So it's just the club one at this point, and then there's an area, and then there's a division, and then there's a district, and then there's a semi-international, and then an international. So I can lose at any level, but I have made it to the district level before, so that should be fun, hopefully, interesting. And I have a lot of ideas for fiction stuff and a lot of unique ideas. I've been getting more feedback, and rarely does any feedback ever come back negative on two of the short stories I wrote. So basically, I've written two good short stories so far. One science fiction for both for contests. One science fiction, I had parameters, so it had to be positive, it had to be a future travel type thing to a specific place and a specific time, and I framed it in a unique way. It was with a father telling his son a story, like a bedtime story about his father, so about the kid's grandfather. And that went well. I've had a lot of good feedback on that. And the only way you can really tell that you have good feedback is when people want to read more, right? There's no other really good indication if people are like, yeah, it's good. It's like, it means almost the same thing as, nah, it's not that good, because you don't really know why. You can't really it's not that useful. If people say they're bored at some point, then that's really important. If they're bored and if they can tell you where they became bored, that's huge. Or confused. Those are like the two major sins of fiction writing, maybe fiction in general, but definitely fiction writing. If they're reading along and they're confused, books going to end right there for them. Or if they're bored, it's going to stop too really soon. So those two things, very useful feedback. And the other useful thing is when they say, oh, I wish you would write more of that one. I would like to read more of that one. And I've been getting a decent amount of that, which is cool. It's hard to get feedback. And writers groups suck from from my experience, what I can tell. The writers groups online, not good. The writers groups in person, not good. Now I think there are good writers groups. Brandon Sanderson loves the writers group he is in, and C.S. Lewis and Tolkien were in the same writers group at Oxford, where they're both professors as well. So there are writers groups where almost everyone in the group is a successful, published, noted author. And where am I going to get into one of those groups? It's basically impossible. So the groups I can get in are with people that are not those things, which could be a useful group because you can come up together. But it's going to be hard to pick out that group or lead that group, organize that group. It would be a lot more useful to serve basically as an apprentice by joining one of the groups where the people already are. It'd be a lot easier to integrate. But that is super difficult to even find, much less join. And that's a major problem, because if you're getting advice from people, it's like, do you take the advice? Do you not take the advice? It becomes difficult. I basically don't take anyone's advice in writing, and I'm gonna continue doing that. I'm just like mavericking the writing thing, and I'm copying other people's styles to educate myself, kind of creating my own educational program, and I do a ton of reading in fiction as well. And you pick that up, and I have a whole stack of books right next to me about writing. Oh, that stack sits next to me. Those are all books on writing by good authors, at least famous, successful authors, and some of them are good. So that's a unique type of development. But these two short stories I've had, I haven't had anyone really say, "Oh, no, not for me," or I didn't really like it. So, which I believe a polite response like, I didn't really like it, is the best rejection response you're going to get from most people. And most people that don't like it are probably not going to respond, so it's hard to tell, but you're going to have a lot of people that don't like your work no matter what you do. And I've had a number of people on both of them say they would like to see it turn into a novel, they would buy it, they would read it, they would like to read more of stuff like that. So that's been really cool, because I can see my skill level increasing, and this means my feedback from people, and even people I don't know online and such, is increasing, which is cool. It's a good indication, and that's super enjoyable. And I'm definitely going to continue the writing, and especially the fiction writing. I have to work on my ability to read write. That's a huge skill. So that's the next skill I have to work on writing, because I think I'm getting decent at doing first draft level material at a decent level. I want to increase, obviously. But the next skill is rewriting, and of course, then at some point I have to try to figure out how to sell it, make money, get it published, something. And that's for another day. So it's another skill set. That's all for now. I guess quite a few little updates in various ways. The most exciting stuff is, well, the most fascinating stuff is the fiction stuff, I think. But probably the most exciting thing is the human flag because it's stabilizing my spine in a vertical, straight position, and we'll see how far I can take that. But I think that is helping my spine a tremendous amount. So hopefully, we'll see. Enjoy the holidays. We're in the middle of them.